On his best friend's wedding night, he didn't hold the bride's hand. He turned to me and asked one question that stopped my heart. You ever witness a moment so wrong it feels like the universe hiccuped? That was me, sitting in the third pew, seconds before my best friend asked me to ruin his marriage before it even started. The chapel was glowing, white roses lining the aisle, soft piano music, people dabbing their eyes like it was a Nicholas Sparks film. Everything was perfect. Except for the groom. Eli. My Eli. He stood at the altar beside his bride, a vision in ivory lace, his hand reaching out. But his eyes? They weren't on her. They were locked on me. And then he said it. In front of everyone. Luke, what if I told you I can't do this without you? Not the bride. Me. And just like that, every breath I had ever taken seemed to catch fire. Eli and I had been best friends since 5th grade. That kind of friendship people write songs about, the late-night drive kind, the take-the-fall kind. We were ride or die. Only problem was, I had died inside 100 times, silently, every time he fell for someone else. Especially her. Rachel. Rachel was sweet. Kind. Smart. She deserved someone who adored her. But Eli, he had always looked at her like he was trying to convince himself she was enough. And I had spent 5 years pretending I didn't notice. We grew up in small-town Kentucky before Eli moved to New York for college. I followed a year later. Not for him, not directly. I told myself it was the job. The city. The escape. But the truth? I'd follow Eli anywhere. He was magnetic in ways I couldn't define. Tall, always laughing with that crooked grin that didn't reach his eyes. He had that kind of sadness no one talked about, the kind buried under punchlines and perfect hair. He dated women. Plenty. But never loved them, not really. And me? I kept dating ghosts. Men with his smile but not his soul. Men I knew I could never fall for because my heart was already taken. I remember the first time he mentioned Rachel. She's different, he said. She doesn't try to fix me. That was the moment I knew I'd lost. Not because he loved her but because he wanted to. She didn't pry. She didn't ask why he flinched when people touched him too long or why he always changed the subject when love got too real. She was soft in the way I was sharp. Easy where I was fire. And I hated how much I liked her. She invited me to help plan the proposal. Imagine that. Helping your best friend propose to the woman who wasn't you. Smiling as you handed over the ring. Applauding when he got down on one knee in front of 1,000 twinkling lights in Central Park. Dying inside the entire time. The wedding came fast. Too fast. 1 week before the big day, Eli and I had one of those nights. Drunk off nostalgia and whiskey, sitting on the rooftop of his apartment. Ever wonder what would have happened if things were different? He asked, his voice too casual. If what was different? He shrugged. If I'd been different. If you had been. I laughed, because the alternative was screaming. You're not broken, Eli. Yeah, but I'm not whole either. And then he looked at me. Like he'd never seen me before. Like I was a lighthouse and he had been lost at sea. But then the moment passed. He looked away. The next morning, it was like it never happened. Until the wedding. Now, back in the chapel, I sat frozen. Eli's hand still outstretched but not to Rachel. To me. Gasps ricocheted through the pews like gunshots. Rachel turned, stunned. The priest stammered. And me? I just stood there, breathless. He said my name again, softer this time. Luke. Do I marry her, or do I finally tell the truth? My legs refused to move. My mouth couldn't find words. I had wanted this moment for years, hadn't I? Hadn't I? But not like this. Not in a white-draped room full of expectations and heartbreak. Not with Rachel's heart breaking in real time. And yet I saw it in his eyes. The desperation. The hope. The fear. He wasn't asking me to love him. He was asking if I still did. The world spun slower than my thoughts. I walked forward, every footstep a war. Rachel stepped back, her lip trembling. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Eli turned toward me fully now, his voice barely a whisper. I can't keep lying, Luke. Not to her. Not to me. Not to you. And then, in front of everyone, he dropped his hand from hers and reached for mine. I know I'm late, he said. But tell me I didn't lose you forever. Rachel didn't cry. That's what haunted me. She just stared at him, then at me with this expression that wasn't shock or rage. It was something colder. Something like clarity. Like she had known this whole time and had been holding her breath for the inevitable. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. You should have said something before I bought the damn dress. A soft wave of nervous laughter rippled through the pews, unsure whether it was allowed. Eli flinched, stepping toward her, but she held up a hand. No, she said, shaking her head. Don't apologize. Not now. Not when it's real. She looked at me again, and her eyes softened. Take care of him. Someone should. Then she turned, lifted her dress, and walked straight down the aisle alone, head high, spine unbroken. No screaming. No scene. Just quiet devastation. The kind that lingered. The wedding unraveled quickly after that. Guests shuffled awkwardly in their suits, waiting to see what would happen next. The band stopped playing. The priest disappeared like smoke. And me? I was still holding Eli's hand like it might vanish if I let go. He turned to me, searching my face. Do you hate me? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not in front of everyone. Not with every cell in my body screaming from the inside out. So I pulled him by the wrist, dragged him out the side door of the chapel and into the cool evening air, past a row of hydrangeas and champagne buckets left untouched. We stopped behind the building, breathless, hearts pounding. That was a mistake, I said, finally. I know. You humiliated her. I know. You ambushed me. I know. You ruined everything. I know, he said again. But I had to. I couldn't lie anymore. I couldn't stand up there and say those vows knowing I was in love with you. Silence. Raw, awful silence. I had imagined hearing those words 1,000 times. Practiced the scenes in my head, late-night confessions, dramatic reunions, candlelight. But not like this. Not with a wedding dress crying in the distance. And not with the knowledge that the man I loved had just broken someone good to get to me. Why now? I whispered. Because you wouldn't let me say it any other way, Eli said, stepping closer. Because you kept pretending you were fine with being my best man, with helping me plan a future that didn't include you. Because I couldn't breathe when I saw you in that suit and realized you were really going to let me go. I didn't have a choice. Yes, you did. You always did. You just kept choosing to love me quietly instead of out loud. I laughed bitterly. And what did you want me to do, Eli? Get on my knees in front of your fiancé and beg for a chance? You were the one hiding. His voice dropped. I wasn't hiding. I was scared. So was I. But I still showed up. We stood there, the words hanging like smoke between us. And then he did the unthinkable. He kissed me. No hesitation. No preamble. Just pressed his mouth against mine like he'd been waiting a decade for permission. Like the world had finally stopped spinning and this was gravity. I didn't push him away. I couldn't. Because in that moment, every wall I'd built came crashing down, brick by lonely brick. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were glassy. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I'm asking for a beginning." But beginnings are complicated when they're born from ashes. Over the next few days, the fallout was brutal. Rachel's family disinvited Eli from every holiday. His parents were torn supportive of who he was, but devastated by how it had unfolded. Our story made it to social media in waves. Runaway groom turns gay mid-wedding, complete with grainy cell phone videos and think pieces from strangers who knew nothing about us. And me? I was the villain. The homewrecker. The reason everything fell apart. I got messages. Death threats. Hate mail. But none of it compared to the guilt. I called Rachel. Dozens of times. Left voicemails that probably went unheard. Wrote her letters. I never expected her to answer, and she didn't. I wouldn't have, either. Eli moved into my apartment 2 weeks later. Not because we were ready to be a couple, but because he had nowhere else to go. And because part of me couldn't let him be alone in the aftermath of his own wreckage. It was messy. We fought over dishes and memories. He tried too hard. I shut down. We danced around each other like landmines. But sometimes, at night, he'd curl up next to me on the couch, his head on my shoulder, and whisper, "I'm still here." And that mattered more than I could say. One night, months after the wedding, I found him in the kitchen, barefoot, eating cereal at 2 a.m. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Just thinking." "About?" He took a long breath. "Do you ever wonder if we're built for this? This? Us." I sat down across from him. "I think we were always us. We just kept calling it something else." He smiled, sad and soft. "I hurt a good person, Luke." "I know. She'll never forgive me." "Probably not. Do you forgive me?" I hesitated. Then nodded. "Yeah. But not because you deserve it. Because I love you too much not to." Healing wasn't linear. There were days we barely spoke. Days when Eli spiraled with guilt and I wanted to slam the door in his face. Days I remembered the sound of Rachel's heels walking down the aisle and wondered if I had really won, or if I just inherited a heartbreak of a different kind. But slowly, painfully, we grew. We learned how to fight fair. How to ask instead of assume. How to hold each other without grabbing too tight. And then, one autumn morning, Eli handed me a key. "To what?" I asked. "To us," he said. "I found a place." We moved in that December. It wasn't a fairy tale. Not really. Our first Christmas, we forgot to buy a tree. We got snowed in on New Year's Eve and celebrated with boxed mac and cheese and a half-burnt candle. Our cat ran away for 3 days and came back smelling like cigarettes and regret. But we laughed. A lot. And somewhere between burned dinners and shared playlists, we found peace. One night, curled up on the floor with a glass of wine, Eli looked at me and said, "Do you think we'll ever stop feeling guilty?" I thought about it. Then shook my head. "No. But we'll get better at carrying it." By spring, Rachel wrote back. Not a phone call. Not a visit. Just a single line, typed in an email. "I hope you're happy. I mean that." Eli cried when he read it. So did I. By the time summer came, Eli and I had slipped into a kind of rhythm. The world still spun full of jobs and rent and laundry, but our center held steady. We made coffee for each other in the mornings, took long walks after work, sometimes without saying a word. There was a stillness between us I had never known before, not silence, not absence. Just comfort. And then, one Sunday afternoon in June, we ran into Rachel. We were at the Union Square Farmers Market, arguing over peaches. Eli insisted on white ones, I swore by yellow. I was mid-eye roll when I caught a flicker of familiar auburn hair 2 stalls over. Rachel. She stood beside a man in a navy button-up, laughing at something he said, her hand lightly resting on his arm. For a split second, I froze. So did Eli. She turned. Saw us. Her expression didn't shift. No shock. No bitterness. Just quiet recognition. Then she walked over. Hey, she said, voice calm, measured. Eli swallowed. Hi. I stayed silent, waiting for the universe to tilt. Rachel looked at him, really looked, then glanced at me. You look happy, she said. Eli nodded slowly. I am. I hope you are too. She smiled faintly. I am. An awkward beat passed. Then she stepped closer to me. Luke, she said, and I braced for it. But all she did was extend her hand. You don't owe me anything. But I needed you to know I don't hate you. I blinked. You don't. I did, she admitted. For a while. But hating you kept me stuck. And I realized I wasn't mad because you took him from me. I was mad because he was never fully mine to begin with. Her honesty hit like a stone in the chest. I'm sorry, I whispered. I know, she said gently. But you weren't the one lying to yourself. After she left, Eli sat on the curb, face in his hands. I don't deserve her forgiveness, he said. No, I said. But maybe that's the point. Forgiveness doesn't always mean erasing the past. Sometimes it just means giving people the space to move on. He looked at me. You're good at that. What? Making things less awful. I smiled. Only with you. The rest of the summer passed in flashes. We took a trip to Cape Cod. I introduced Eli to my college friends, who grilled him like he was applying for a visa. He passed barely. We fought over what color to paint the bedroom wall. He wanted navy, I chose sage. We compromised and left it white. He started therapy. Quietly. Bravely. And one morning, as we lay tangled in bed with the windows open and a breeze drifting through, he whispered, Do you think we'll get married someday? I turned to him, heart in my throat. You're not allowed to propose until you've been mine longer than you were almost hers. He laughed, eyes crinkling. That's fair. But he didn't take it back. And I didn't ask him to. A year passed. Then another. We grew into our love like worn-in shoes, not always shiny, not always smooth, but always ours. We built a life slowly, brick by honest brick. Then one night, 3 years after the almost wedding, Eli came home late, breathless and soaked from the rain. He carried something in his hand, not a ring box, not flowers, but an old, crumpled piece of notebook paper. I found it in a box at my parents', he said, handing it to me. I unfolded it. It was a list. Things I'll never say out loud, written in Eli's teenage handwriting. Item 4, sometimes I think I love Luke and that terrifies me. My throat tightened. I wrote that when we were 17, he said, voice low. Before I even understood what it meant. I looked at him. You knew. I knew enough to run from it. I reached out, cupped his jaw. Not anymore, I said. He leaned in. No. Not anymore. 2 months later, he proposed. Not in a grand way. No fireworks. No cameras. Just the two of us in our kitchen, barefoot, dancing to a song on the radio we didn't know the words to. He pulled out a ring from his back pocket, dropped to one knee between the dishwasher and the sink. Luke, he said, I have no idea how to do this perfectly. I've hurt people. I've hurt you. But I love you more than I ever thought I could love anything. So if you'll have me, flaws and all, I want to spend the rest of my life learning how to do it better with you. I cried. Said yes. Pulled him off the floor and into my arms. Our wedding wasn't big. 50 people. Backyard garden. No white roses, we went with sunflowers and lavender. Rachel sent a gift, a simple frame with the words, "Love honest. Love brave." She didn't come. We didn't expect her to. But her gesture spoke louder than any speech could have. Eli cried through the vows. So did I. And as we stood there, fingers intertwined, I realized something. Love doesn't always arrive wrapped in ribbon. Sometimes, it crashes in like a storm, ruins a chapel, leaves collateral damage. But if you survive it, if you're willing to rebuild, what you're left with is something true. Something worth every broken piece. Years from now, when people ask how we met, we'll probably lie. Say we were college roommates. Say we fell in love slowly. Say we were just lucky. Because the truth is messier. The truth is that on his best friend's wedding night, he didn't hold the bride's hand, he held mine. And asked me a question that stopped my heart. Our wedding night wasn't what you see in the movies. We didn't ride off in a limousine or toast champagne under a chandelier. Instead, we went home, kicked off our shoes, and sat on the living room floor in our suits, eating leftover cake with our fingers. I can't believe we actually did it, Eli said, laughing with a mouthful of frosting. I can't believe we got through it without anyone yelling. He grinned. There's always the honeymoon. We didn't leave town. No tropical island. No five-star hotel. We stayed right where we were, our tiny apartment with paint-chipped walls, the cat who still hadn't learned not to scratch the couch, the cluttered bookshelf we never organized. And somehow, it felt perfect. That night, as we lay in bed, Eli rolled toward me and traced a line down my chest with his fingertip. I keep thinking about the night I almost married her. I nodded. Me too. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had? I turned to him. You would have made it work. You always do. He looked at me, eyes unreadable. But would you have waited? The question hit harder than he probably meant it to. I don't know, I said honestly. I think I would have tried. For a while. Until it broke me. His voice cracked. I'm sorry it ever had to come close to that. I pulled him closer. I'm not. If it hadn't, we wouldn't be here now. We wouldn't be us. And I meant it. Marriage changed us, not in the obvious ways, but in the quiet ones. I learned how Eli liked his eggs. He learned how I folded socks. I discovered he cried during documentaries and left half-finished water glasses all over the house. He discovered that I hoard receipts, just in case, and talk in my sleep. We still fought. About bills. About family. About whose turn it was to take the trash out. But we fought with care now. With intention. With a softness that came from knowing the stakes. Because this wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about building. 2 years later, we got a letter in the mail. A friend of Rachel's, letting us know she was engaged. To the man from the market, the one in the navy button-up. They were moving to Portland. Starting fresh. I stared at the card, a delicate cream with gold lettering, and thought about the version of me that might have shattered seeing her move on. But that version was long gone. Instead, I smiled and handed the card to Eli. She found her ending. He nodded. And we found ours. Our ending looked like a porch swing and Saturday pancakes. It looked like quiet mornings and shared books, late-night grocery runs and dumb inside jokes. It looked like grief too. One fall, Eli's father passed. The funeral was a blur of black suits and casseroles, but the hardest part came after when Eli sat on the kitchen floor at 3 a.m., holding a photo and sobbing like a child. I didn't try to fix it. I just sat with him. Because love, I'd learned, wasn't about having the right words. It was about staying when everything else hurt too much to hold. Years passed like seconds and lifetimes. We adopted a dog. Traveled to Italy. Fought about baby names we weren't even sure we'd use. Every chapter brought something new: joy, pain, healing. But we held on. Even when life got messy. Especially then. One night, when we were in our 50s, we sat on our back porch watching fireflies. I think about it sometimes, Eli said. The wedding. He nodded. What I did. How I hurt her. How I almost lost everything. I took his hand. But you didn't. He looked at me, eyes still the same shade of storm cloud gray. I still don't know if I deserve you. I smiled. You don't. He laughed. But, I added, neither do I deserve you. That's what makes it fair. Love, at its core, is imperfect. It's jagged and loud, sometimes full of bad timing and worse decisions. But when it's real, when it's honest, it becomes something else. Not easy. But sacred. So if someone asks me how it all began, I'll tell them the truth. It started on a wedding night. Not mine. Not his. But hers. When the man I had loved for half my life turned away from the altar, looked me dead in the eyes, and said something that broke every rule and every plan. I can't do this without you. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked for truth. And I gave it to him. Because sometimes love doesn't knock. Sometimes, it breaks the door down. And sometimes, that's exactly what it takes to finally come home. The end. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.